I'm really happy to be here today. What I'm going to do, I will tell you a little bit about the project I'm working on. I'll tell you a little bit about me and what I do, and then open it up to questions. So the very first slide I've got here is name, job and project. So I'm Loretta Lipworth. My job is design management trainee. And the project I'm currently working on with Wilmot Dixon is called Stockport Interchange. Basically, it's a new bus and coach station, unlike any other bus and coach station you've seen before. So I will show you some of this. I'm going to put the little laser pointer on this presentation. There we go. So what is Stockport Interchange project? It's a bus and a coach station with the usual stuff like a cafe and some shops in there. And that's, you can see in the picture here, the bus and coach station is underneath a park for the public. So the park is on top of the bus station. The project also includes an apartment tower, which is 14 stories with some shops at the bottom. And it also includes a bridge, a long bridge behind the residential tower here, and it goes up through a landscaped area to the local train station. So the bridge is for people walking and cycling between the train station and this new bus and coach station that we're building. I'm going to show you as well what we call next, what we call a master plan. And this is basically a view of the entire site from above. So I'll highlight some of these parts of the project on here. So we've got the park area, the bus and coach station area. We've also got a little building on the side here. The apartment tower. This actually has solar panels on top of the apartment tower as well, and so does a little part of the bus station here. And we've got the bridge up to the train station, which is here. Now, this is a really exciting project because there's a lot going on. Also, it's an exciting project because of the place where we're building all of this. So we're building it next to a big main road going through this town called Stockport. This main road is also a bridge, and it's what we call a listed bridge. So it has some significance in terms of its history. We've got to be really careful when we're building around it. It's also right next to the main train line from Manchester to London. So it's very busy. We've got to make sure we don't do anything on the construction site which affects this railway line. Also, in terms of sustainability, very interesting because it's right next to a river as well, the River Mersey. And so we've got to make sure we do lots of things on the construction site so that we don't have a negative impact on the environment around. So I'm going to show you another image, which if you imagine you're a bird here and you're looking across the site from the northwest here down towards the site, this is what the project, all of these buildings, are going to look like in the future in a couple of years when we've built it all. So this is what it should look like in the future. We've got the bus station here with a park on top. Got the residential tower, and we've got the bridge snaking its way up to the train station. So the idea of the project is that it's a new bus and coach station which connects with other forms of transport, and this should encourage people to use public transport instead of using the car, because when everything's a bit disconnected, people tend to think, well, it's a lot of hassle, I'll use a car if they've got a car. So this is trying to encourage people to use public transport. Also, the idea of this bus and coach station is that it's what we call future-proofed, which means that it will be good for the future as well as now. So they're thinking about, well, if we're going to have electric buses, how are we going to charge those buses? If we want more people to cycle, where are we going to have all of the bicycle parking? Also, it looks nice. Having a park there, it disguises the bus station because some bus stations can be quite ugly, as I'm going to show you. And it's also good for the community, because having all of this space means that people hopefully will come together. They'll go for walks. Maybe they'll have some kind of food markets and stuff up here. So the next image I'm going to show you is, if you imagine you're somebody standing on this road and looking at the site, the next image is what it currently looks like. So this is a real photograph of Stockport bus station at the moment. And it's not very nice. It's a bus station, it's really uninspiring. The weather generally in Manchester and Stockport isn't that great. So this is pretty typical of what it looks like. It's just not a very nice place to be. So this is what we're going to build. Imagine standing in the same place. This is what it should look like in 2 or 3 years. So instead of seeing this kind of dirty old bus station, you actually see a park, and the park is on top of the bus station. So it's kind of disguising all of the buses and all the concrete that you need to make this bus station. And then we've got this residential tower here as well. So that's enough about the project. I'll tell you a little bit about me. What do I do? I'm a design and management trainee. That means I'm training to become a design manager. I've been working in construction about 5 years now, and the company I work for is called Wilmot Dixon. That company is what we call a main contractor. Essentially, it means we organise the entire construction project here. We don't actually design the project or the buildings ourselves, and we don't actually build them ourselves. What we do is we employ designers, like architects and engineers, to design all of this, all of the buildings and these areas. And then we employ loads and loads of companies, different kinds of companies, to build them. And because there's so many people and so many companies involved, they need people to connect all of those companies and to basically organize it. It's a big, big project. So my job is to help organize the design aspects of that. So some of the things I do is constantly meet and talk to the architects and the engineers, and there's lots of different types of architects and engineers. But I do lots of different things in my job. Also, what I do is I write the contracts for the designers. So there's a bit of legal stuff in there. I also work on the time plans. We call that programming. A lot of what I do is looking at the difference between old and new drawings of the same area. And it's also like, it's almost like a kind of spot the difference exercise. I look at what's different and I pass that information over to our finance team so that they can figure out whether it's going to cost more or less to build. When we make those design changes, we've got to make sure that we understand the impact on everything else in the project. Those are just some of the things I do. It's a really, really varied role, design management, and that's kind of what I like about it. Next up, I've written, I didn't used to work in construction. I've only been working in construction for 5 years and I'm 37. I actually worked in set design for film and TV and theatre before that. And then I also did some teaching. And all of my education, my degree and my master's degree is in design. So I am what you might call a career changer. I changed into construction because I just find it really exciting. I also do a lot of voluntary work. That's mainly with women in construction. So I help run an organisation which helps women meet each other and helps women to learn more about the industry. Lastly, I've written, I love buildings, because I just find it really exciting. And I think any job which involves buildings is just really exciting. I think there's something amazing about seeing a new building go up and thinking, gosh, I had something to do with that. That's pretty incredible. Anyway, that's enough of me talking, I think. I'm going to put up a slide here saying, any questions, don't be shy, because I really like answering questions. And also I think it's really important because when I was at school, I knew nothing about construction at all. And I would never have considered it as a career because I didn't know anything about it. I've got lots more images. I've got some videos if you want to see, and I've got some sneaky ideas here if you do want any ideas for questions. So I will shut up.
Good question prompts. I love it. Yes, I'm pretty certain that the audience will love to see more images and videos. And for some of the students and teachers and careers leads here, I will definitely be asking Loretta to share those where they are not commercially confidential over on Best Connect, so you can see those in your own time as well. I guess the first question I have for you, Loretta, you mentioned that you did so many other things before you came into construction. How did that transition occur that you went from one thing to this?
Yes, I'll try to give a simple answer, but actually it was a series of events that brought me into construction. I think the main thing to say is that I always loved architecture, but I knew at school that I didn't want to do an architecture degree. I knew it was 7 years, and I was concerned actually even at that time about the kind of tuition fees situation. I just thought, wow, 7 years is a long time. Anyway, I forgot about the architecture idea until I did my master's, which was generally just called Design MA. That was in Manchester. And there's also the architecture school at Manchester. So I just kind of started hanging out in the architecture school, and I went to their lectures, and I found it really interesting. And I made some friends on the architecture course. And it was one of these people who I made friends with who, after I finished my master's, he sent me an email and he said, by the way, have you ever thought about working in construction? Because he had started working for a housing construction company called Barrett, and he recommended me to apply for their trainee scheme. And I thought, oh, do you know what, that sounds like a great idea, actually. I love the idea of working with buildings, but without necessarily being an architect. So that's really how I came into it. And it was difficult to change over, but I think really I've found something that I really love, because it now I understand why I considered architecture first of all. It's the building side that I really love. I hope that wasn't too rambly an answer.
That was great. That was great. And I think, you know, for any students listening to this, and I know that's something that people have said across the whole week, that you don't need to know the answers to the rest of your life when you're 14 years old. It's okay to figure things out as you go and to learn more. And that's certainly what we're trying to do this week, is just give you a sense of what the whole of construction and the built environment is. And with that in mind, I would imagine that very few people have heard of design managers in terms of construction related work and space. Could you tell us a little bit about what an average day might look like for you? What sort of things do you do, and how do you get good at them?
It's really difficult to say because it's so varied, but that's what I love about design management. So design management, being a design manager, is basically anything to do with design on the project. So I'd say, like I said with the slides, quite often I'll be well, me and my seniors, I guess, because I'm still a trainee, but we'll be meeting with the architects, the engineers. So the architects, by the way, we have different architects for the residential tower. We have an architect for all the park area. We have an architect for the bus station area. We have designers for, we're actually doing what we're calling a blue roof, which means that it holds all the water and it helps to for the trees and the plants. We have designers for the electricity, for the ventilation systems, for the structural engineers, the drainage, the bridge. There's just loads and loads of different designers on the project. So what I do a lot of is meeting with them to understand how their design impacts someone else's design, because there's got to be a team that bring it all together. If we just let everyone design their own little bit, it might work, it probably wouldn't work. You need someone to bring it all together. And also then we can find out, well, wait a minute, if they're doing this and if they're doing this, can we make that work more efficiently together? That's most of what I do, but there's just all kinds of things. It's almost impossible to say, because you end up working in such an integrated way with the rest of the team. So I'm always on the lookout for anything in the design which changes, which will then impact the financial side of things. So, oh, wait a minute, they've changed the roof, sorry, they've changed the ceiling from, let's say, one type of wood to a different type of wood. Does it cost more? Does it cost less? We've got to make sure that we understand how much it costs. And also then I think, well, will it take longer to install that ceiling than the other type of ceiling? So then we've got to pass that information on to the program team, because then they've got to figure out how long it's all going to take, because even tiny little changes, if they build up on a project like this, which is massive, it could add another 3 or 4 months to the project, and we can't have that. We need to make sure that we stay on track, hopefully.
It sounds like an amazingly varied role, and again, something that I know for the careers leaders who are joining us for today, there's, you know, a couple of comments coming through that this is something that nobody's ever even mentioned to them exists.
Absolutely. Even when I started looking into construction as a career, thinking, oh, buildings are great, I didn't know that design management existed. And then it all clicked, because I thought, well, I love the design side of things, because, you know, there's lots of different roles in construction, but I suddenly thought, this is great, this is interesting. And there's a lot of stuff in the future with it, because we've got to really start thinking hard about environmental sustainability, and we've really got to start thinking hard about digital ways of doing construction. So I think it's a very exciting future for design management.
On that note, going back to the project that you were just talking us through there in the bus station, obviously anything that encourages people to use public transport and to feel comfortable doing that, to feel that it's not some awful afterthought and a dreary experience, that it's actually an enjoyable place to be, it is going to be good for us all and for the planet. Were the original plans for that, was that something that the local community was involved in designing and shaping that space?
Really interesting, actually. One of my main tasks for today, for this afternoon, is actually to I need to write some emails and meet with someone, because we're doing what we call a public consultation exercise for the park element of the project. So when the client, or as Wilmot Dixon say, the customer, which is Stockport Council, when they were first thinking about building all of this, they did a public consultation. So they asked members of the community, of the local community, what they thought, because they wanted to include their kind of feedback into the project. And now they're doing another public consultation scheme specifically for the park, because what they don't want to happen is that they have a park which isn't used. There's no point in that. So they're identifying certain groups in Stockport. So we've got families on our list. We've got older people on the list. Who else have we got? And we've got college students on the list, because there's a large college nearby. And they're doing kind of engagement sessions to ask people what they want. And of course, we know now we can't, for example, we can't have like a golf range on the park. We can't have footballs and stuff, because if those footballs go into the middle of that bus station, there's a problem. But what we can do is get some ideas and try and make something more interesting and more than just grass and plants, even though that's nice. So that is actually one of my main tasks for today, is to meet with the customer to try and figure out that a lot of that stuff.
And for any students who might be considering landscape architecture as something that is of interest to you, that the sort of the places and spaces that surround the buildings, actually having parks like that that are well designed, that are safe, that are accessible is so important, again, to make that space utilized and make it something that's quite vibrant and alive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing, you know, when we know we need to build way more houses in the future, we know we want better quality offices, and that means building and building more. So the green spaces that we do have, particularly in city and town centres, like here in Stockport, the project I'm working on, we need to make sure they're good, useful spaces. And it's novel, the idea of putting a park on top of a building, but in this particular space, it makes a lot of sense because the levels in the area, you know, the fact that the park's going to be at the same level as the road and the bus station goes underneath it is very interesting, and it's just a good idea, really. So yeah, let's make sure that we actually build something that people want.
Definitely. As someone who's come into the industry quite recently, and we've had lots of speakers across the week, and the purpose of the Festival of Construction is not specifically about sort of gender and those sort of messages, but as someone who's come in recently and who's maybe seen construction at its most innovative over recent years and in its most accepting, how do you see them taking on conversations around sustainability and that sort of social sustainability, community engagement, all of that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I think this is where it will get really interesting because, for example, my company, Wilmot Dixon, they are really trying to be at the forefront of all of this. They just launched a pretty ambitious sustainability, environmental and community sustainability strategy, and they're taking it very, very seriously. As I understand, you know, I only joined the industry 5 years ago. As I understand, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, it just wasn't as much of an issue. But I think also these construction companies understand that if they want people to work for them, then they're going to have to do something good, because especially to young people who understand the seriousness of the situation with the environment, I think a lot of younger people are wanting to work in industries and have jobs where they're having a positive impact. So I think that's really, really, really exciting and important. We need people to be working in construction who are going to be fighting for environmental issues and advising companies like mine how to do it really well.
Absolutely. And I know we've got so many activist young people who are joining us for this week here and wanting to see whether construction could really be a space that takes that seriously. And I think, as you say, in years gone by, no, it probably wasn't, but actually it's not optional anymore. It's We've got to do it for clients, and we've got to do it because otherwise we don't attract people to come and work here, and then we build things that are terrible. A lot of the people on this call are maybe looking at career choices for themselves and thinking about where they go and what they do with their lives. And as we've said, you don't need to have all the answers when you're still at school, but what advice would you give to your younger self when you were, you know, on all of the things that you've learned and where you've got to right now?
Do you know, I think for me, I'd probably say to my younger self, don't be afraid of going with your heart and doing what you want to do, because for me now I can look back and see that everything I've done so far, it's been a kind of windy path. I can see how it's led to here, and of course you don't have that kind of insight when you're at the beginning of the path, but really, yeah, don't be afraid and do whatever you do with joy, because you know, it's construction is an interesting industry. There are lots of different people, and because of the nature of all of this kind of, like you said, the environmental stuff being fairly fairly new in terms of its importance. If you find people that are resisting to these ideas, then I think it's really important to share what you know and what you are really passionate about with joy, because that's infectious. So yeah, I think I just say kind of trust yourself and go for it, and really don't be afraid of failure. Failure and rejection is part of learning, and I am very, very hard on myself. So I think, you know, if you do something wrong, it's probably okay. Learn from it, carry on, and carry on with doing what you feel is really good for you.